This week, I'm going to chat with the uber talented Canadian based and Ukraine born photographer and fellow YouTuber, Irene Rudnyk. We had an awesome conversation about her career and her approach to her gorgeous fashion and lifestyle images. Stay tuned.
You're watching TOGCHAT Live, the only live show dedicated to the hows and whys behind creating consistently great photographs. Here's your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey, gang, that's me. How is everybody doing tonight? I hope that you are all healthy and safe. And I would like to welcome you to episode number 231 of TOGCHAT Live. Can you believe it? Remember, the only live show with a focus on the hows and whys behind making consistently great photographs. And for the next 60 minutes, I'm here to help you improve your photography. Folks, you know the drill. Be sure to check in, leave a comment. Let me know you're here and where you are in the world. It's always so cool to see so many people from so many different countries tuning in to chat about their love of photography. In fact, TOGCHAT is watched by photographers in over 100 countries around the world. Tonight alone, we've got people here, Canadian Source Rex from Montreal, Lynn in New York, she's still digging out from the snow. We've got, let's see, Alan in Copenhagen. I've got Patrick in Paris, Ken in Cheshire in the UK. Lawrence is here from Thursday in the Philippines. Mitch in Northern Ireland. Robert in New Jersey. Does Jersey count? I don't know. Frank Beckman, Germany. German in Honduras. I can speak tonight. Alvin down in Virginia. This is so cool. We even got Malcolm right down the road from me. So I hope you're all healthy. And of course, still wearing a mask, practicing your social distancing, all that good stuff, right? We got to get through this. I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. It would help a lot more people find my channel and TOGCHAT if you could do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube will recommend the show to other photographers. And hey, while you're down there, feel free to hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Or you can share the link, which I just put in the chat for you, tog.chat/live. Twitter, Facebook, fastest way to get the word out. And hey, listen, if you are a member of any photography clubs or groups, please let them know about TOGCHAT. Don't keep it all to yourself. Man, tonight we've got photographers here from Russia, Turkey, Greece. I'm sorry, but that's awesome, gang. You're all so awesome. Thank you. And look, I know it's fun to chat, but I'm going to ask you save the chat for the questions, not discussions. That way you don't miss any great tips that may help you improve your photography, and I don't miss any of your questions in the chat noise. And remember, TOGCHAT is available for download as a podcast every week. I'll share the link in the chat for you, and it's also in the show notes. Let me grab that right now before I forget it, because otherwise I'm going to forget it. There we go. Okay. The podcast is a great way to get your weekly fix while you're editing or retouching, and each episode of the podcast includes content that you aren't seeing here on YouTube. So don't miss out. The show's available on iTunes, Google, Spotify, Amazon, and of course, all the major podcast platforms. And I'm excited to announce that it's now available on iHeartRadio as well. I post the podcast a few hours after the end of the live show every week. And that brings me to tonight's feature. I have got an awesome interview for you with a photographer from Calgary, Canada. She was born in the Ukraine and moved to Canada when she was 18. She is best known for her incredible fashion and lifestyle images, and of course the videos that she shares on YouTube. My guest tonight is the one and only Irene Rudnyk. Now, as always, I'm going to play the first 20 minutes of the interview for you here on YouTube, and then the full unedited interview will be available for download as part of the podcast a little later this evening. So make sure you check it out. Irene talks about her career path as a photographer, shares some awesome tidbits about how she creates her incredible images. You don't want to miss them. And of course, I want you to make sure that you check out Irene's Instagram and YouTube channel. The links are in the show notes, and I'll share them during the interview. So let's go ahead. Let's get right into it. Irene, it is an honor for me to finally have you as a guest on TOGCHAT. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor for me, honestly. I've been like a huge fan of your channel and of TOGCHAT. I watch your podcast when I'm editing like all the time. I don't even think I missed any.
Well, thank
So
you.
thank you. So thank you so much for having me. I've been like wanting, like commenting on on all videos of yours, being like, please.
And I
Let
always
me be on your
appreciate it when you
TOGCHAT.
stop in. Well, so I have to be honest with you back. I'm a big fan, but I'm a really jealous fan, Irene. I really am. And I want to actually talk about the root of that. We're going to get to that because there's so much about your work and the way you approach your work that I am actually very jealous of because I don't see the world that way. And I wish I could. So that's going to be something we're going to discuss. But there are so many things I want to talk to you about today. But first, for the folks in my audience that really don't know you, can I ask you just to take a moment, introduce yourself, and tell people what should they know about Irene?
Oh my goodness, I hate introductions. So my name is Irene Rudnyk. I am a professional photographer from Canada, Calgary. If you've heard about Banff, I live really close to beautiful mountains. But I'm originally from Ukraine, and I'm very proud of my heritage. I often put my heritage in my photography. I'm now also a Canon ambassador, Canon Canada ambassador, which I'm super proud of this achievement. And of course, I'm a content creator and teacher on YouTube. And when people ask me to describe my photography in like few words, I describe it as feminine portraiture.
So you actually jumped right into my second question. So let's dig into that a little bit. Your work is what I would describe as very stylized. And that's part of what I love so much about what you do. So using your phrase, feminine portraiture, which I think is a great phrase, but what makes a photo an Irene Rudnyk photo? Like, what are the elements that are really important to you that you are always going to use in a picture?
People ask me so much, like how did you come up with your style, or like how would you describe it? And it's often very hard for me to describe, or even like try to think in my head like why I like to shoot what I like to shoot. But I try to think. When I was younger, I was always into all sorts of arts. And I was into painting and taking photography. I would take pictures of my sister. I was also a lot into like different animated movies. And one of my favorite shows was Sailor Moon. I don't know if you've heard of Sailor Moon. And to me, Sailor Moon was like, it's still to this day, I love it so much. It was like a powerful, beautiful, feminine, like women. Just like being beautiful and so powerful. Like, I just love the combination of the two, and also having like a fantasy element to it. It's like a perfect escape, and like something that I wanted to be when I was a little girl. And I feel like that sort of goes into my photography a little bit. So whenever I photograph someone, I want to make sure that they're the best version of themselves, almost like a version of themselves that doesn't really exist in this world. Like, they're perfect, they're beautiful, they're perfectly styled with the clothing. They live in some kind of fantasy world of their own, right? And I think that's kind of how it works in my head. Like, I just want to create something that I see in my head, and I want to put it out in the world. Again, this kind of hard to explain, but
that's awesome. So you may have given me part of the answer to this next question already, but with all that in mind, for you, what makes a good picture good? Like what makes it stand out from an average or a bad photo for you?
I love like all sorts of photography, so it doesn't really matter what style it is. It can be a portrait, it can be in landscape, doesn't matter. But for me, I think the biggest thing is if it really captures my attention. So I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed and I saw the image, and I actually want to take a few minutes trying to figure out, how the photographer set the shot up, if the colors look really nice together, if I'm looking like at the retouch and stuff like that. So it's mostly just about capturing my attention, but it can be like anything else. And it's not easy to actually make an image that it's like that you want to look at for a long time.
Now, this is actually not a question I was planning, but you just sparked an idea. Sounds like you spend a fair amount of time looking at other photographers' works, and I'm sure that's a good thing. So what are you looking for? Like, I totally understand the idea of, we see so many images, just flicking through Instagram. It's like, what really catches my attention? But is there a takeaway? Because I understand too, being a full-time YouTuber and doing the kind of work you do, time is a premium. I completely understand that. So to be looking at images like that, I have a feeling that that's actually part of your creative process, or am I being too assuming there?
For sure. Yeah, for sure. I'm such a visual person. I love getting inspired by like anything. It could be absolutely anything. I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of like historical movies because I love getting inspired by the costumes, the outfits. And for Instagram, it's the same thing. I love looking at other photographers' work, or it doesn't even have to be specifically like portrait photography. It can be anything. Even like sometimes I follow a lot of florists and I love the floral arrangement. So it can be absolutely anything. And if it is a photographer, I love looking at the work of people that do something different than what I usually do. So more fashion photography, or something a little bit more experimental, because I love taking elements that they're doing differently and then applying it to my photography. I feel like if I look at people that do similar stuff to mine, sometimes I get maybe like, you get a little bit envious if you feel like they've done something better than you, or you feel like you're stealing ideas sometimes, like sometimes this happened many times where I've done a photo shoot, and by no means like my photo shoots are not like original or anything like that, they're very like classic themes, but sometimes I just kind of come up with something in my head. I do a picture and then I find someone else have like almost the same exact picture, right, with the same exact idea. So I try to not to look at other photographers' work that do the same stuff that I do. I try to look at people that do things like differently than me. So then I can, yeah.
Okay. So does that mean that we should be looking forward to an upcoming YouTube video where Irene does a Queen's Gambit styled photo shoot? Is that coming?
Oh my God. But okay, I love the show. I love it. I love the 60s style. I've done a photo shoot with my sister in like the 60s. And I love the makeup. I love all that. But that's the reason why I probably won't do it, is because I've already seen hundreds of pictures of people doing it and doing like, the kind of what I would do, like a girl sitting with chess, playing chess. So like, I don't know, maybe if I find a way to do it in a different way, maybe I would.
But you just said something that I didn't expect to hear, but I'm glad I heard it, because I talk about this a lot. Other people did it, so why would I do it? Like, I don't want to do it because it's already been done. Why not do it? I'm curious.
It's kind of, I don't know what it is. I don't have an explanation for it. It's like I said, I say that my work is not very original and stuff, but I do still like to do things slightly different than everyone else. Even like when it comes to YouTube, when I started doing YouTube, I specifically did it because at the time where I was trying to learn and trying to find, tutorials that would work for me, I couldn't find anything. At that time, it was very limited. So I'm talking like 10 years ago. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to make a YouTube channel that's going to be different from all the other YouTube channels. I'm going to make something that's like more focused on doing everything yourself, and being creative, and more focused on shooting itself rather than like talking about cameras and tech and reviewing tech. So I guess in a sense, I still try to do something slightly different. And again, also because I've seen so many amazing pictures of people doing that theme, I just feel like I can't add anything to it, like that's new and different and fresh.
I'm with you on that one. When something's been done and has been done really well, it takes a lot to get me to even consider,
Mm-hmm.
you know, jumping into that space. Like, why?
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like
Yeah.
it's almost like guaranteeing failure before you even start. So
For sure, for sure. And it's just I don't know. Yeah, it's just kind of again something, and it's been, the show's been so popular as well. Like everyone loves it. You know, it's kind of like, again, almost like you said, like being almost like a snob. It's like when you love a show but then everyone else loves it, it kind of like diminishes the value of it a little bit. So
absolutely. So you talk a little bit about kind of some of the catalysts for your YouTube channel, your approach to YouTube. And I know that you're self-taught, as am I. But I think sometimes that, you know, when we hear a photographer say they're self-taught, a lot of people just kind of look at that person like, well, they're like just some kind of creative genius of some kind. and they don't really understand the hard work that went into being self-taught. So share a little bit, if you would, of kind of how you taught yourself the skills that you have today.
For sure. I mean, if people want to see my early work, there is a video I made a long time ago, and it's called something like looking at my it was something like looking at my embarrassing pictures or something. I don't remember exactly the title. Those pictures are bad. They're really, really bad. They're so awful. Oh my goodness. So, you know, nowadays I look at the pictures of some of the like young photographers that are just starting out, and they're so good. And I'm like looking at my old work, it's just so bad. So it's definitely not something that you can just pick up the camera and all of a sudden you start taking amazing, unless you're like, I don't know, crazy gifted and for some reason you're just a genius, right? But no, it took a lot of just years of practicing, trying things out, seeing what works and what doesn't, and just pretty much just like not giving up, right? Good thing is like I've always thought that I'm good. So even when I was not good, I thought that it was good. So I was never like sad about my photography, and it was never something that I was like, I'll give up, you know? So that's one of the things that I always tell to all of my like students that I teach at the workshop, is that no matter where you are, like it's good to recognize what needs to be worked on, but don't be super hard on yourself, because you always should be confident in your work. And as long as you love it, that's like all that matters, right? So I think that really helped me, like just being confident in what I'm doing, no matter what I'm doing.
That's great advice. So is there any possibility, and maybe you don't see it this way, maybe me as an outsider sees it this way. I know you were born in Ukraine. You moved to Canada when you were 18, right? Right. So my experience with Eastern European culture, and for years I worked with a makeup artist who was from Moscow. And I would always joke, she knows I would say this, she would say the same about me. Biggest pain in the ass I ever knew. The woman was so creative, just beyond imaginable, and really had a huge influence actually on developing my beauty style and all of that. But in the course of working with her, I worked with quite a few Eastern Europeans, usually in front of the camera, sometimes also as makeup artists. And there was one thing that I was always very, very jealous of them about, and that was their confidence in their creativity. And so I used to talk to her a lot about her childhood and her upbringing and her schooling. And one of the takeaways that I learned is that compared to schools here in the US, at least, art and culture seem to be a much bigger part of education and upbringing. Do you think that had an impact? I mean, how much of that carries with you or influenced, or maybe in your case it doesn't? How do you?
Right. You know, that's an interesting take. I've never like thought about it that way, but I can definitely see it for sure. Our education system is very, very different than the education system here. Completely different. Like even for example, a lot of the times you can choose what courses you want to take or what classes you want to take in school. Back home in Ukraine, there's no such thing. You cannot choose what classes you want to take. You have to take everything. So we've taken, literature, Ukrainian, and then international. Same with arts, like Ukrainian, international. You had to study all of it, right? So I can definitely see it, but I think for me personally, I took a lot of it from my mom. Like my mom is super, super creative. She can do anything. Like anything that you can possibly think of, she'll make it herself with her hands. And she's always very like meticulous with it, that's one thing I didn't take from her, is like being very, what's the word? Precise. Yes, like detail oriented and precise. I'm more like my dad, where I like to, if I'm DIYing something, I want to do it fast and effective, and she's the one that will take a lot of time with it and perfect it and make it look super presentable. But yeah, I'm super inspired by her and everything that she does. So like, I feel like I've taken a lot of that from her. Like, growing up, we weren't like poor or anything, but we didn't have that much money, right? So a lot of the things she would just make herself, like some clothing or some decor for the house, just to make it like beautiful and homey. She always loved flowers. So I feel like just because of my mom, I'm a lot more creative.
Very cool. So at what point in your life did you get into photography?
So I was really interested in photography actually around like maybe 13 to 12 when my dad actually was already in Canada at that time. He was working in Canada and then coming to Ukraine to like visit us. But he sent us a video camera and a photo camera, a digital one. And that's when I was just obsessed. Like I would go outside and take pictures of everything, like flowers, trees, leaves, and especially of my sister. So even at that time, and I have a bunch of those pictures, are really funny, of my sister. And some of them are also done on the film, like the point and shoot kind of films. But yeah, I would dress her up in like just random clothing that I thought was like fashionable or cool because I saw it in fashion magazines. And I would pose her and we would take pictures. So like I've done it, since I can remember. I was also really into making little movies with all of my neighborhood kids. I was like the only 13-year-old just ordering all of the kids to, play out whatever scene I wanted, and I would record it. So I was really into it, from the start. But the time where I got into it like seriously was when I came to Canada. Because I was bored. There was really nothing much for me to do here. I didn't have that many friends. So me and my sister, we would just go out to the park and take a bunch of pictures of each other, but mostly me taking pictures of her.
Okay. So then when did you kind of know, like, this is it? Photography is like, it's my thing. It's what I want to do with my life.
I knew a few years into going to university here in Canada is when I knew that I don't want to do that and that I want to do photography. I studied international relations and I didn't finish. I had only 1 year left, but I decided that I just was wasting time and money of my parents in school, and that I was 100% knew that I wanted to do photography. At that time, I already shot with like some models in the studio. I already knew for sure this is it. And I was so confident that this is what I wanted to do. My parents are very, very traditional, like very traditional Ukrainian parents. And so when I told them that I'm going to quit school and start doing photography, it was very scary. But because I knew that it's going to work, I was like, I did it, right? So I told them and I was like, sorry guys, but I know this is what I want to do.
That's awesome. So you made that decision, you left school. So how did you get from kind of wanting to be a photographer to actually doing it for a living? Like what was that path? And even if there were some stumbles, what were the stumbles along the way?
Oh my goodness, there were so many. Oh my God, I'm not a business savvy person, like at all. And there were so many mistakes that I've done on the way of trying to work with clients, figuring it out. I feel like everyone has those stories, like, but I have so many horror stories working with clients, from the fact that not making contracts or not taking money ahead, and all sorts of that kind of stuff. But the way it worked, I started off by working on my portfolio first. So, and kind of deciding what I want to do, what kind of clients I want to attract, right? I decided that for my style, the best was to, and in the area that I live in, weddings, family portraits, boudoir, that kind of stuff. That's what I was doing. And it worked actually really great because let's say I shot a boudoir picture for the bride, then I shot her wedding pictures, and then when she had a baby, we shot her pregnancy pictures, and then when the baby was born, you know how it goes. So that's kind of what I was doing. So yeah, first I worked on creating portfolios. So I worked a lot for free with just models or friends and family. I made a website, and then I just started advertising everywhere that I could possibly do it. I would advertise on Facebook, my friends, on Kijiji. Kijiji is like Craigslist for Canada. I would just try to advertise it as much as I could. I also, what I did is I worked with already like a professional wedding photographer as his second shooter to gain more experience. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. Yeah, like I said, it was a lot of learning. Oh, and yeah, I worked with the wedding photographer who's already like a professional in that field. I did a lot of second shooting for him. Which was awesome. I gained so much experience. I learned so much from him. I slowly kind of, actually something that I can give to people from this, my experience working with clients, was that at the very beginning, I thought that I will never be able to make money off what I do right now. So off of those pretty pictures of women, right? I was thinking like, well, who's gonna be the client? Where am I gonna get, like, how am I gonna charge for this? Like, I don't know who's gonna want this. So I kept on doing like family pictures, wedding and stuff like that. But on my Instagram, I still kept on posting those kind of pretty pictures, stylized. And then I started getting clients who already shot with me, like, let's say their family. They were like, actually, I kind of want something like what I see on your Instagram. Can you do that for me? And I was like, oh, for sure. So I started doing more of those and then posting more of those pictures of just regular people, doing these. And to my surprise, there was a huge market for that. Like, I was super surprised. And it kind of, I guess it's not really surprising because women want to feel beautiful. They want to feel like a princess. They want to feel like a queen. And I was giving them that full experience. They would come over to my house. We would choose any dress they wanted from the collection of my dress. I have a huge collection of vintage dresses. And then we would go out, take their pictures of them looking, like crazy with huge hair and makeup and like some beautiful scene with flowers, and they would love it. They would come back like multiple times, and I was like, wow, I actually can make money off of that. And what was the great thing is that there was no one in my area that was doing that. So I pretty much had like almost no competition in that. I could price the way I wanted. I started pricing a lot higher.
And that's where I'm going to leave you hanging because I really want you to hear the entire interview. You guys hear me talk a lot about the idea that to make money as a photographer, you have to do what you do to the best of your ability and then find the people that will pay you for it. And Irene takes us through her journey in doing that and then shares a lot of information about how she goes about creating these shots and styling them and putting all the pieces together. So as I mentioned, the podcast goes live around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. tonight. You can find it at tog.chat/podcast. I'm going to grab the link here. I will put it in the chat for you. And of course, it's also down in the show notes. So make sure you check that out. My photo notes for the week. I want to let you know about a cool new feature for TOGCHAT, and that is voicemail. Yeah, I said voicemail. So if you visit my website, the section for TOGCHAT that I just gave you the link for. On the right-hand side of every page, you will see this button down there that will allow you to leave a message. You press it, you enter your name and your email address, and leave me a question. I'll do my best to answer it on the next episode of TOGCHAT. When you do it, be sure to record it in a quiet place and give me a nice detailed question, just like you do here, because I'll play the audio of you asking the question on the show when I answer it. And I'm also proud to report that TOGCHAT has broken into the top 150 of all visual arts podcasts listed on Apple Podcasts. Now I know 150, well, actually 149 to be exact. That doesn't sound super impressive yet. But keep in mind that the category of visual arts is not just photography, it's a very broad category. So at the current pace, and with your help, we should be in the top 50 in no time. In photo news this week, the rumor mills are at it again as Nikon has announced that it is pulling the plug on camera production in Japan. Yeah, come on. We know that Nikon is having financial woes, as are all of the camera manufacturers. It's in the middle of a pandemic, right? My personal thoughts are that this is no different than American companies that have moved their production to China as a way to cut costs and increase profits. It's also worth noting amid all these rumors that the factory in Thailand that will now produce all of Nikon's cameras was actually opened by Nikon in 1990, and it's been producing most of their cameras and lenses for the last 30 years. In other words, this isn't really news. It's definitely not big news. If you're a Nikon owner or if you're considering one, this is not a reason to change your mind. The website canonnews.com has reported that Canon has filed patents for a new context-sensitive touchpad. That's right. This could be the beginning of the end for the shutter button. Now, I know some of you are saying out loud right now, how dumb is that? But you know what? I think it's a great move forward. Of course, if it's designed right. Think about it. If we go to a touch-sensitive system, additional features could be added in based on pressure and location sensitivity. It would also be one less spot on the camera that would require weather sealing, which helps make the cameras more durable and resistant to the elements. Time will tell. Camera companies file tons of patents every year. Not all of them come to fruition. You know, I've talked quite a bit on this show about the future of using software and AI technology to streamline the culling process. Recent episodes, I showed you the latest from Kodak, which is the Professional Select software. And there was already a piece of software called Narrative Select. And most recently released for just $10 is a Mac-only app called Cull AI. Now, this is geared mainly for people shooters that are doing like weddings and events, that kind of stuff. I'll tell you that early reviews are promising, but all seem to agree that there's still more development work to be done. So, you know, at the end of the day, do you need to rush out and grab this piece of software? Honestly, I would save your $10, right? But keep an eye on it for the future. When they refine AI software, they will be huge time savers when they are perfected. All right, enough news. I know that's not why you're here. So how can I help you tonight? You're here, so there must be something that you want to improve with your photography. I see we just got a couple questions in. We've got a lot more room, so type away, gang. I have a few questions that came in from my Facebook groups. And by the way, if you haven't joined yet, it doesn't cost you anything. Link is in the show notes. You should check it out, right? So the first one that I have here is a question from Tony, and he is asking, there we go. The Westcott 5-foot by 7-foot X-Drop system sells for about $120 with a gray background. Is that worth it? Well, Tony, I mean, is it worth $120? I would say yes. And I'm known for giving Westcott a hard time about their prices, but I've used the X-Drop system. I don't own one, but I have used one. I think it's well done, well put together. It's very portable. But really the key to giving you a good answer is it depends on how you intend to use it. If you are putting together a permanent setup, meaning if you're setting up a home studio or you're going to have a studio, in a scenario like that, I'm not so sure that I would go with the X-Drop system. I would want to go with something that is one, a little bit more permanent, meaning easier to set up and adjust, and two, potentially a little bigger and wider and even taller. If this is a matter of you're going to be going out on location and doing portraits and things like that, you need to be able to travel light, set things up easily, and have enough background space to do a decent portrait, then absolutely. They do have them available in black and white. I would encourage you, though, stick with the gray because, again, if you learn to light it properly, you can make that gray background black. You will, since it's only a 5 foot by 7 foot background, in order to do that, you'll probably have to go with a slightly longer lens, but it's very doable. And of course, with some extra light, you can make that background white very easily. Okay. All right. The next question I have here comes from Harold. When moving from free shoots to paid shoots, do you go straight into a price that will cover everything? Or would you lower your price and raise it as you get more experience with clients? Hal, that's a great question. And honestly, it's a place where many new photographers screw up, myself included, right? I made all the mistakes when I did that. So you will hear people give you different variations of advice on this. There is the camp that says, yes, it's a good idea to make sure that you are charging comparable with your skill level and your technology savvy and the quality of the images that you're going to deliver. And then as that improves, increase your prices. The other camp is the camp that says, if you are serious about making a business out of this or making a career out of this, then you really should be jumping ahead and doing all of the appropriate research and math to determine what your actual rates should be. In other words, the rates that are going to support you and the rates that are going to allow you to make a profit and sustain a business. That being said, sometimes the challenge when you first do that is you're going from, the $10 or $50 photo shoot to suddenly saying it's going to cost $300, $500, $1,000. That's a big gap to justify. I don't find that to be a problem. The only problem with that is actually within the photographer's mindsets. So what do I mean? Simple. Just in the fact that you are asking the question in the way you are asking it, you are doubting your self-worth there, right? So part of establishing that proper pricing, number one, is knowing this is what it's going to take for me to sustain what I'm doing. And then number two, you may have to do some catching up, some extra hard work, some extra practice to get to that level. But if you keep reminding yourself, I have been doing it for cheap, I'm going to be, I'm going to be doing it now to try and make some more money, but it's a big step. If you keep reminding yourself that, you're not going to be able to get there. I would rather see you establish the prices you need to sustain yourself. If you still feel somewhat uncomfortable charging that dollar amount, then instead of discounting your prices or lowering your prices, offer additional incentives, meaning maybe you include a few free prints. That way you're still giving your clients your price, the price that you need to charge. And that's what they're paying. But you are incentivizing them to pay that by giving them additional services or products. Maybe you're going to shoot a few more outfits. Maybe you'll shoot in a couple different locations. Maybe you're going to include a big print or maybe even frame that print, depending on what dollar amounts we're talking about. I would encourage you, whatever you do, don't discount it. And the reason for not discounting, folks, when you discount your work, you are showing the true value of your work. No business survives by selling things for less than cost. Certainly, you go to a supermarket, some department stores, places like Walmart or Target, they will do what's referred to in the business, in the retail business, as a loss leader, where they will sell something literally at a couple pennies each loss, knowing that when you come into that store, you're going to spend money on many other things and they'll make their money. You don't have the number of products and services that Walmart has or that Target has. So it's much harder for you as a photographer to make up that difference if you're going to do a loss leader. So it's important, set your rates. Setting your rates also helps establish your worth and your value. And by the way, will you lose some of your early customers? Yes. And that's okay. And I'm not trying to sound insensitive. You have to understand that the customer that's only willing to pay $50 for a photographer, and by the way, they're not bad. Some people, that's all they can afford. So let's be clear. But that customer is not your customer when you're charging $500 or $1,000. You have to go find different customers. So much like Irene talks about in her interview, if you get to listen to the rest of it, it's a matter of, finding your customers. That's really the key. Okay. All right. The next one I have here, I got two more and then we'll get in. I see some good questions coming. Thank you. Keep them coming, gang. We got a little bit of time yet. This is from Donna. I've just started getting into portraits more seriously. Do you think that tethering is something that should wait until I'm more experienced, or would it help me improve faster? Donna, that's actually a great question. So I'm going to start with the end. Would it help you improve faster? It will, for sure, provided that you're not afraid of the tech. So what I mean by that is, and this applies to men and women, it doesn't matter. If you are really early in your photography path, and if you are still feeling less than confident about your gear, your camera, your lenses, your lighting, there is the risk that adding tethering into the mix can overwhelm you a little bit at first. I mean, it's really not hard, sincerely, but it depends on you personally. As far as are there benefits early on that will help you improve quicker? Absolutely. The biggest benefit to tethering, honestly, when you're first getting started and you're still working through the learning curve, tethering forces you to slow down because you're attached to a computer. And because you've got big images popping up on the screen that are much easier for you to evaluate and to see details that are otherwise going to haunt you later. Twisted straps, flyaway hairs, hair coming down through the eyes, things like that, right? So, yes, I would say as long as you are not feeling overwhelmed by your current gear, I would be very willing to make that jump if I were you, because I think that you'll find there's a lot of benefits to being able to see those images nice and large. Okay. All right. I got one more here, and then we'll get into the chat window. From Thomas, could you suggest a few ways that a photographer might begin a commercial portfolio? Thomas, the best way? Pick up your camera. I'm not sure exactly kind of what angle you're coming at me with that question, but as a commercial photographer, so I mean, that could mean a bunch of different things, right? It could be product work, it could be maybe doing event photography, it could actually include some portraiture, it could be doing architectural work, it could be doing lots of stuff, food, you name it. All of those things that I just mentioned. Unless you are a really great snake oil salesman, you are not going to get people to pay you to do those things until you can prove that you can do them. But every one of those categories that I mentioned, you can go out and do them without being paid. Just like you folks heard, Irene already talked about in the interview that I aired earlier, how she went out and put her portfolio together by shooting people for free. So you can shoot products for free, you can shoot buildings for free, you can shoot food for free. You can certainly ask people if they would like to have a portrait done for free. I don't think too many people will say no. So it's not that you necessarily have to have a portfolio that reflects years and years and years of experience. You frequently hear me talk about the idea that when it comes to putting a portfolio together, you can look like a rock star with just 5 pictures. And equally, you can look like a complete hack with 10 pictures. if 5 of them are just there to fill a quota. That's a bad idea, right? But you've got to be able to show your potential clients something. So the best way to start a portfolio, honestly, is to start shooting. Given the way you're asking me the question, Thomas, and I'm making a big assumption, but it sounds to me like you're looking at commercial photography as kind of this large category and saying, well, this would be great because I love photography and I want to make money. All the more reason, if that's where you're at, all the more reason to try each of these things. Try some food photography, try some architecture, maybe try some event work, portrait work, try product work. Try all of those things to see which you enjoy the most. That is going to help you know what to focus on. I wouldn't say biggest, but one of the biggest mistakes that new photographers make is deciding to start a business as a photographer, shooting things that they think will make them the most money, as opposed to shooting things that they are sincere about, things that they care about, better yet, things that they are passionate about, much like you heard Irene talking about before I cut away. So you need to download the rest of the podcast and you'll hear her journey and how she built a business doing something that many people had told her, you won't be able to make money doing that. But indeed, you can. It's all about finding your customers. Not everyone is your customer, and that's okay. But it's a very hard thing for a new or young photographer to accept. And trust me, I say that from experience. Okay. All right. So I'm just going back through the chat now here. Let's see. From Peter, Joe, is the full interview with Irene going to be on YouTube? No, sir. It is going to be on my podcast. I will download. All right, download, excuse me. I will share with you the link one more time here in the chat window, Peter, so that you have it. I post the podcast live at that link about, let's see, we finished at 7, about 3.5 hours after I finished the live stream tonight. So since you're in the UK, when you wake up tomorrow morning, go to that link. You'll be able to download and listen to all of it. And I promise you, there's some really, really good stuff in there. So make sure you check it out, okay? From Rich, Joe, I got to say, what you just said about pricing is some of the best actual answer advice on the subject I've heard. Well, thank you, Rich. I'm sorry. I thought you had a question there. I appreciate the feedback, and I promise you, Rich, it's that's an answer that's been learned the hard way. I have experienced it myself, especially when I was in my 20s, when I got out of the newspaper business and started a studio. I ran all kind of specials, and then I couldn't raise my prices. And it's one thing with portrait photography. It was devastating when I did it with commercial advertising because I was attracting clients that were attracted to, yeah, I did good work, but they were attracted to my price. And then I found myself in a situation where I felt like they were taking advantage of me because I couldn't raise my prices. I would get pushback from them. And so, then I found myself in this situation where I created a problem, but yet I'm feeling animosity towards the clients because the clients aren't willing to pay what I'm really worth. Well, it really wasn't their fault. They were being smart business people. It was my foolishness for setting the rates so low, thinking that I could kind of do a bait and switch, drag them in at a cheap rate and then get them to a higher rate. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. So I am very opposed to running discounts. I am not a big fan of like mini sessions. You hear portrait photographers all the time now doing these mini sessions. Some do it wisely. In their sessions, you're really not getting much. That's the key. Others, like, practically throwing the keys to a new car, and then they wonder why they can't, make decent money on a portrait session. Because believe me, folks, for those of you that are starting out, if you're doing portrait sessions and you're bringing in $500, $700, and you're thinking, oh my God, man, I am kicking some butt. No, sorry. Talk to me when you're bringing in 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 a portrait session or more. Then you're at a point where you are creating a sustainable business that's going to pay your bills and it's going to support you. So that's not about living up to my standards. That's just really about basic math and cost of living. So yeah, you got to be really careful when you do, those little deals. Yes, they bring some people through the door, but if you don't have your business set up to really capitalize on that, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. And the perfect example, so many of those photographers that do the mini sessions, they do these quickie little mini sessions for cheap, and then they post the proofs on the internet. where people can go and order pictures, pay for them, and then the lab does the fulfillment. Now that sounds easy and smart, right? No, because they're taking all of the emotional storytelling connection aspect out of the sales process. If you're going to make money doing portraits or weddings, you make that money by selling pictures, not by taking pictures, right? So, yeah, it's definitely something for you all to consider if that's what you're looking at. Especially, I know this time of year with the new year coming up, there are a lot of people that are sitting here thinking. In fact, I've talked to two this week. Hopefully, by the time we get to the middle of the year, COVID's going to be manageable. Things are going to open up, and I really want to hit the ground running with my business. And you know what? That's awesome. But that means that in the next 6 months, you have a lot of work to do. It's not like I kind of hang around and wait for things to happen. It's a really figure out what is your pricing structure, what's it going to take for you to be able to survive, and really get your social media marketing going so that you're not out there throwing money at the wall with Google ads and that kind of stuff, hoping that you can generate some traffic. So, all right, for David here, when shooting families, is it a good idea to have a pose list available if you run out of ideas? Would this not be professional or would it not matter? All right, so David, this is one a lot of people won't like my answer, and I'm going to give you kind of a two-sided answer, to be honest with you. So follow along, and hopefully I'm not going to make this confusing. First of all, understand that I would encourage you, number one, to stop using that word. And I'm really serious. And I am very aware of the fact, folks, that I am, this kind of guy alone on an island when I talk about this idea of stop thinking of the concept of posing. Why? Because everybody's out there selling, posing books, posing videos, posing cards, posing apps, pose this, pose that. And the simple fact of the matter is, we could go to Google, Facebook, or Instagram right now and look at hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of portraits and family portraits with people that look like they got sticks shoved up their butts because they're holding poses. So at the end of the day, all these really beautiful poses with everybody staggered and creating triangles and all this stuff, it's pointless if you are not actually connecting with your subjects and if you are not creating relaxed and engaged body language. So my advice, Rich, thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate it. So, my advice, David, when it comes to the whole posing thing is at least change your thought process a little bit, right? Would it be bad for you? So here, now I'm going to talk in the other direction. Would it be bad for you to maybe put them on your phone? Like I wouldn't take necessarily like a list, but I would on your phone, set up a photo album in your camera roll with your posing ideas, right? And that way you pop the phone open and you scroll through it. And is it bad if you say to your client, you know what? I had this idea for a shot and I just want to find it again here really quick. Oh, you know what? There it is. That's awesome. So here's what I want to do. You don't have to tell them that you found the picture on Pinterest. You don't have to tell them that you got it out of Google, whatever. You're just basically going to say, hey, I had this idea and I saved it. I want to make sure I find it. Boom. That's it. Super simple. So it's all about presentation, right? You should, however, make sure, David, that you're not just collecting all these pictures that you think, okay, they're interesting. And then when you actually have a client with you, are going through them saying, well, maybe that'd be good. Maybe this be good. No, that's bad. That's really bad. Because basically you're eating up time that makes you look like you're not confident. You should have, before you go, all right, I'm going to be photographing a family of 4 or a family of 5 or a family of 6. So maybe set up separate albums, families with 6 people, families with 5 people. That's fine. And so you should have a plan for these are the poses that I want. And you should take some time in advance to study those poses. And if you're like me, I would never remember those poses. It would take a half a second to trigger them and to be like, yeah, okay, good. So study them, get to know them. But is it a problem to open up the phone? No, not at all. All right. Just understand that if you are a little bit too forthcoming about, well, I'm not really good at posing, and I'm gonna try this. Let's do this, and so what are you doing now? You're showing them another photographer's photograph, right? All of that diminishes the value of your work. All of that causes your clients to not have a lot of faith in you during the photo shoot when you're trying to make them relaxed and everything else, right? So it's all about presentation because you notice my version, I didn't lie to them. I just didn't tell them that I collected all these pictures because I'm not really good with ideas for photographing a group of people, right? Um, but in the meantime, what I would also encourage you to do, if you really want to be at the top of your game, and if you really want to be able to generate great work, you need to do a little bit of research, Googling, reading, not in the photography world. Do it in general about body language so that you learn to see the identifiers and learn the triggers with body language. And read a little bit and learn a little bit about engaging people and making people feel comfortable. Because the fact of the matter is, if you've ever seen me do my little demo here, which I'm not going to do it tonight because I won't have enough time, but if you've ever seen me do my little demo about how I direct my portrait subjects, where I do the hand thing and all of that, part of what I talk about is if I want my subject to be happy and if I want my subject smiling, I never say smile. If I say smile, all I get back is the Duquesne smile. That's a real thing. It's cheese. You can Google that phrase, Duquesne smile, okay? It's not the smile that we want. We want something that's natural. We want something that's relaxed. We actually want it to be a little off because that's engaging. So when I'm directing my subject, if I want happy or smile, I'm going to tell them, okay, we're going to make this shot really, really happy. I want a lot of energy. That's it. I want you looking right at me. Awesome. Really cool. And you notice I'm building and I'm building and I'm building and my energy's there and I'm smiling as I talk. Body language. We tend to reflect the body language that we see in front of us. So when it comes to getting your subjects to relax, when it comes to getting your subjects to look happy, also, especially if you've got kids in a group, when it comes to getting their attention, getting a little bit more intense and excited. Yeah, and we're going to look right here. That's awesome, guys. You got those kids' attention and you're going to own those kids. If you're going to do the quiet, melancholy photographer buried in their gear, being very formal, it doesn't matter what poses you have. They're going to look like they have sticks up their butts, right? So focus more on that, less on the actual pose. Patrick, thank you so much for the super chat. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Okay. All right. So, Dwayne, I'm curious, do you think quality light differs based on manufacturer? Example, Godox, Profoto, Westcott, to name a few. I don't think, I know, but I don't worry. So let me explain. If we were to bench test, and there's plenty of information out there about this, so I'm not making this up, gang. If we were to bench test Profoto, Godox, and Westcott, but let me stick with Profoto and Godox because I can speak factually about those two. If we were to bench test the two of them and measure the quality of light, in other words, the purity of the light and the consistency of the light output in terms of brightness and the light output in terms of color quality, hands down, Profoto wins, right? But yet I use Godox. Because even though Profoto has that pure light, and I have been a Profoto owner in the past, it's not worth the money, gang. Sorry. I know Profoto doesn't like me saying that, but it is how it is. I'm all for companies making money, but in the last 2 years especially, Profoto reached the point where they maxed out the professional side of the industry, so now they're advertising to amateur photographers. And I think it's 99.9% ridiculous that so many amateurs are running around with Profoto gear because they're not getting their money's worth out of it. The fact of the matter is, with the processing tools that we have, Photoshop, Lightroom, Skylum, Luminar programs, all that stuff, the slight differences that you would find bench testing a Godox and a Profoto, it's not worth the money. not when you are able to do a simple color correct in Photoshop. And what you have to remember, 99% of what most of you shoot, the color is subjective. I've never met a portrait photographer that does his portrait with the idea that my skin tone has to match perfectly, the shirt has to match perfectly, the back. No, I've never met that photographer. I'm not saying that, you should maybe do a gray card to get a good white balance, that kind of stuff. Sure, I do that. I'm talking about people that need exact color match because none of you that are listening to this show need that. You just don't. I'm sorry. You're kidding yourself if you think you do. Now, if they call you to go and photograph the Mona Lisa and they need a reproduction of the Mona Lisa, then you better have exact color, right? So yeah, it's certainly it's a personal choice. Pro photo strobes are great, but I can do anything that a pro photo can with a Godox for a fraction of the cost. And you have to understand, you can get more lights that way, right? Instead of spending all that kind of crazy money. But the one thing you have to understand simply is that pro photo does not make your pictures better. No different than one camera brand over another. It doesn't make your pictures better. That's up to you and what you do with it. Okay. All right. From Canadian Source Rex, Mike, just wanted to thank you for your advice a few TOGCHATs ago about using a flash for newborn shoots. Bounce the flash off the ceiling and worked out great. Awesome, Mike. Glad to hear it. Yeah, you got to be really careful with newborns too, because flash directly in their eyes can be a little detrimental also. All right. Andres, now I'm going to do a Queen's Gambit photos shoot with my dad tomorrow. Thanks for the idea. But Andres, here's your challenge. I hope you didn't miss this part. The reason why Irene hasn't done it and the reason why I don't do it, it's been done. First of all, I have yet to see anybody in the photography world produce anything that looks a fraction as good as the actual television show. Because the production quality on that show, outstanding. Set design, color schemes, cinematography, lighting, brilliant on that show. So the challenge is, just by saying, I'm going to do that tomorrow, you're setting yourself up to be a cheap copy. So I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I'm saying, okay, you're a brave man, braver than I am. But your challenge is, you've got to be able to meet that level that they managed to maintain and find a way to do it different. Because even if you match what they did, it's been done. You're just a copy, right? Just like Xeroxes. Copies are never as good as the original. So figure out a way to give it a twist. Figure out a way to make it different. Okay? All right. Ooh, I'm late again. Let me get this question here from Lane. The best way to shoot in front of a 4K TV using soft light bounced off whiteboard and keep a person from looking like an overlay. Shooting at f8, ISO 100, 1/60th of a second. Tested different settings. Still looks bad. What I don't know, Lane, you didn't give me your lens and your distances and all that kind of stuff. But if I'm making a bet, the problem is you're shooting at f8. If you're going to use that background, you're not trying for reality. If you try to make it look real, like if you want to make it look like the person's walking down the street in New York City, it's not a good idea. And that's not how you've seen me using them. And when they do them with TV shows, like in The Mandalorian, that's how they do the settings in The Mandalorian. They're huge, massive LED TV screens. They're building huge rooms and there's real space. You need to open up and shoot at a wider aperture. If you shoot with much more shallow depth of field, things are going to start to look more real. That's going to be the key. Okay. Too much depth of field, especially if your backgrounds are kind of real backgrounds, so to speak, where you're trying to put your subject in a location, then yeah, you want to kind of shoot wide open if at all possible. Katie from San Antonio. Katie, you got here just in time for me to say, okay, gang, that about wraps things up for this week. Please enjoy the holidays over the next few days. Thank you for tuning in and for a great night of chatting about all things photography. Don't forget, download the podcast. to hear the rest of my interview with Irene Rudnyk. You're not going to want to miss it. I hope to see you guys again next Wednesday for the last Talk Chat of 2020. In the meanwhile, stay safe and healthy, and whatever you do, please remember these words. Thanks for watching this episode of TOGCHAT. Don't forget to download this week's podcast for even more TOG knowledge. The link is in the show notes. Now go and pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios.